recovering from the news of President Donald Trump's stance on Jerusalem this morning, with the Arabs, Europe, and the UN rejecting this maneuver. Perhaps more relevant to the financial markets, the view of the IMF, China's growth objectives clash with financial stability goal, but obviously the IMF's record on financial stability has not been fantastic, so maybe we'll take that with a pinch of salt. And then finally, an issue which perhaps is close to the hearts of AstraZeneca shareholders, Roche drug cocktail doubles chance of holding lung cancer at bay, one of the sort of cutting-edge areas of the pharmaceutical business. Here in the UK, factors to watch, Rolls-Royce in the news there on yesterday, or sorry, rather today, on the news it would cancel and delay some international flights because of its engine issues. Royal Mail, obviously it's Christmas, Royal Mail are looking down the barrel as far as strike action is concerned. And then the headlines on gold and oil. Oil prices higher on Thursday after a decrease in US inventories. Gold lower and looking really rather flabby. I'd like to think that that's because of the successes of Bitcoin in the recent past, but gold, yes, on the back foot. We'll look at the chart in a moment. And metal, which is close to the heart of Russell Jones, but not myself, copper, higher higher today, but still also on the back foot, off the back of fears over the situation in China. Obviously the Remainer mainstream press obsessing over the possibility of no Brexit deal, as well as the Irish border issue. The only hope there is that on the second part is that the DUP would break its deal with Theresa May and finally put her out of her misery, but perhaps that is too much to wish for this side of Christmas. As far as the market's concerned, the proper stuff, here we've got gold looking, as I said, extremely flabby indeed. This pattern has been there for a number of days. You can see that descending pattern there, quite regular really, in terms of the way it's going down on the 50-minute chart, and still probably one would be looking for a target towards 1240, the way things are going in such a consistent manner. Sticking with the commodity area, also, as I said yesterday, NYMEX looking rather painful situation as well, mirroring the slide we've seen for gold, and also suggesting that a target well south of $50 to $55 is on its way. We had a sort of range thing going there, under $60. So that if that breaks to the downside, I think things could look rather painful. Obviously, the Saudis have done everything in their power to try and keep the oil price up to get their Titanic Aramco IPO over the line. I use the word Titanic without any irony there, and therefore, if there is any pressure on oil, especially with the US inventories, I think it could be under pressure over the next few days. Onto the currencies, starting off, I suppose, with the pound dollar, also on the back foot at the moment. We were looking for, we're trying to guess, obviously, as one does in these situations, where support might be found here. But in fact, we just seem to go slightly lower levels, 20, 30 pips every day. And you get the slight feeling here that there could be more of an acceleration to the downside if the 133, 50, 80 level breaks that channel. Again, looking slightly on the ominous side. Pivot for the day around 133.97. So just see whether over the next hour or so this market can make any progress through that. It doesn't look as though at this stage it will be able to do that. Going on to the euro, also have a drift obviously ahead of the non-farm payrolls. So it's tested overnight its pivot level at 118, around the 118.07 area, and doesn't seem to be very happy about trying to break through that. So we have support, first support for the day, 117.67, and it wouldn't be surprising if we went back down towards that zone. For dollar yen, on the more bullish side, I managed to sneak in a trade a bit overnight, and it's around the 112.40 level, and it's behaved rather well. Got first resistance there, 112.60, so that's coming in there, and there's a bit of overhead resistance as well for the yen over the last few days, going around like that. So again, 112.60 over the next hour. See whether that can break. Looks like it could actually, with that higher low that we had around the 112.40 area. So the bulls perhaps in charge there. And then finishing off with the more dramatic currency of the last 24 hours, the Canadian dollar. You had the initial move there, very sharp move, a sort of bear trap rebound, and looks like we've got a sideways shuffle ahead of a new leg to the upside, and 128.44 first resistance according to the pivot method. As far as the indices are concerned, the DAX, the usual gap on the open to the upside, resistance there, 13,077. So chance of getting that over the next hour or so, one would imagine. We've already had an attempt to fill that gap, which has not succeeded. So we've got about 20 to 30 points of upside, possibly over the next, as I said, the opening part of this today's session. And Wall Street, a bit of a drift there towards the its pivot level, around 12,160. We have to see whether that holds for this market. Dow looking rather more weak than the DAX at the moment. But I hear Russell Jones waiting in the wings. Wanted him to comment about the Australian Parliament passing same-sex marriages. Is that an issue that is close to your heart, Russell?
No, it's not something which I personally would be into. People can
I wish they would actually put people out of the misery and actually ban marriage. I think that would, a lot of people would actually be married with any sex.
Well,
that might be some years. There might be some years.
I've got a problem. I'm not homophobic, but obviously, as things progress over the years, I'm sure we'll have some form of bestiality marriages in the future or something of that nature. But you know, we're in a world now where obviously virtually everything is accepted, and if you don't accept it, you can't wear the coloured shoelaces, can you? So that's life.
Right. Anything on the stocks front today, Russell?
Sorry. The Dow, as you said, it hasn't got a lot of momentum. It was down another 39 yesterday. And the Nasdaq had a marginal recovery. It was up 14. And although I'm not convinced that that sector rotation has stopped, you did have a stronger day with some of the large tech. And Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, Facebook, JD.com and Netflix were all up, with Apple, Baidu and Tencent slightly down, but not massive percentages. However, you know, it stopped the rot of the last few days, and you know, these companies have still got massive increases year to date. Overnight, some of the Chinese tech has some favourable reviews in India, so obviously that should be further momentum for that. As we look, the Wall Street futures are up 29. The FTSE's penciled to be opening up slightly up at 8. Not a great thing, but the pound, I think, will come under increasing pressure, so it could have a little bit of improvement for the FTSE. And the reason I say that is because Brexit just seems to be going nowhere. So obviously, I think that will just weaken the pound further, which will have a knock-on impact, if need be, on some of those retailers' recoveries. But going back to the share movers from yesterday, the three which Zach brought to the party, really, they do really need to be on your watch list. And I suggest you bring these up in order, Zach. Blue, which is Blue Star Capital to start. I know we've talked about these for the last few days. However, Blue Star Capital went up a further 22.1% yesterday. Now, if you look at the increase over the last 2 days, it's 45%, which is tremendous.
Well, it's all right. It's okay. It'll do.
That was the number 3 riser overall yesterday on the market. The next one is Velatech. I thought that, with a slight retraction the day before, that wouldn't carry on increasing, but Zach pulls it up here now. You can see that was the number 13 riser on the market, and up 12.1%, which is superb. And then lastly, finishing with the number one riser on the market yesterday, which is MSG Group, Milestone.
Well, yes, it's just getting too easy, isn't it, Russell?
Yeah, and that's 28.4% up. Now, yeah, Zach, there is a linkage with all three of these. Do you want to just spill the beans again?
No. I've probably forgotten the beans because they're so complicated for somebody of my age and my appreciation of technology. But they were just there were stocks that I picked out or were picked out on the basis they were leveraged plays on the rise of blockchain and the rise in Bitcoin. So that's those are the best ones on the market at the moment. I suppose you could add in online, but online is just a consultancy, and so it's just a bit like us saying we're. I suppose we could say we're stock market consultants. It's not really much. It's not exactly a high tech. Well, it's not a significant play in that way. So this seems to be a company just getting on the bandwagon rather than it being something which is an investor in it directly, let's say, in the blockchain idea. So online is probably the other play, but and that looks like a pretty decent chart as well, the fact. But the three companies that are picked out there was just, those were picked out really on the basis that buying Bitcoin is a bit hairy, whereas buying a penny stock compared to that with a small exposure, you could multi-bag if the phenomenon grows, let us say.
Yeah, if you can go back to the blue chart, Zach, I'd appreciate it. I think what's interesting on these three stocks, I am going to talk about them just for a little bit longer. I made a mistake on one of these. I actually, my son was complaining because I do trade his ISA for him, and I stuck his money into blue, and he said, "What the hell is that?" And then 45% up 2 days later. Obviously, he's skipping around the kitchen. But on saying that, these are quite liquid for small stocks, because I have traded these the last 2 days quite effectively. And all right, the Vela one, initially I put in 25 grand, which is larger than what I normally would on a stock of this nature. However, you can still trade it at decent values. So they are reasonably liquid, so bear that in mind. And I think,
well, just to go in there. I mean, in fact, Blue Star this time last week, the shares weren't moving at all, but it's still the third, fourth highest volume traded stock on the market. So there was a lot of interest in there, let's say, even before the move. So that's why perhaps you have the liquidity in that situation.
That's cool. Anyhow, look, moving on from those, but before we do, just to emphasize where we are with blockchain and Bitcoin. Bitcoin, I had a night's sleep last night, but I did wake up briefly at about 1 o'clock, and it had gone through 14,000. So the Bitcoin phenomenon still continues, but it did add a little bit of a pause for breath between 1 o'clock and as we are now. But it's now got a market valuation of 247 billion. I just don't believe that because it's deregulated and there's no kind of controls from central government with Bitcoin, with it being deregulated and it's finite with the amount of coins there. They're talking about up to 25% of the coins have been lost anyway. I just don't see this stopping until it's gone up another 5 to 10 fold. But that's my view on that. We could have, until it hits a tenfold up, it hits $2.5 trillion. Then the central governments and banks will start to get a bit nervous. But as Zach alluded to, I read a couple of articles, and there is a little bit of a flow from investing in gold into Bitcoin even now. Hence, obviously, the gold price has dropped because of us not getting the full money going in. But 247 billion. I will be diluting my positions as of Friday afternoon, primarily because of the new Chicago opportunity of shorting. and I want to understand what that will have with increased volatility. But I've talked to a couple of people I know which are very experienced in the city, and there's still a feeling overall from institutional that they're still going to go long. So that would be interesting anyway. Today's results. There's not a lot out. It's been very quiet of late. A very quick final. Company called CareTech, CTH. Its revenues are up 11% this morning. And what's interesting with this one is that it's actually making money in the adult services sector, and obviously it's got child services as well. But when you consider the problems a lot of them have got, they get such a variation from private support compared to the government level. On the government level, as you've probably seen with the likes of Four Seasons, etc., which are in desperate need of cash injection or more revenue coming in, they've increased their underlying profit by 12.6%, and their dividends gone up by 7%. It is a small company at 322 million. It was operating on a PE of 13.43. With the increased dividend, obviously, it's fairly solid. But the growth for the year on it was 49.47%. Its net profit will not show as a growth because it did some acquisitions during the year. But that's not a bad performance. Interims, large company, DS Smith, 35.56 up for the year. Market capitalisation of 5.74 billion. If you're not aware, it's corrugated packaging, so a lot of it exports. So its revenue's gone up 19%, on a constant basis 14%, so it's the benefit of the cheaper pound. Profits are 251 million, up 11%, again constant 6%. Dividends up by 7%. Its ROACE remains at 14.6%, although it has dropped its BPS by 50 points, so that may be frowned upon a bit with margin. But I think overall a good result, and with a company which has got predominantly buys from brokerage companies, that could be a re-rating upwards shortly, but 35% growth on a fairly resilient company, so good performance. Clipper Logistics, another interim out today, 21.58% up for the year. Works on a much larger forward PE because obviously a lot of its business is on fulfillment as well as standard logistics, retail sector support. Revenue's up 21%, 199 million. It's only a smallish company at 428 million. Profits up 21%, divvy up 16.7. So again, one to actually put on your screen watch, because I think there could be some positive nature on that. And one to keep an eye on today, because I expected a more dramatic update, but it's for the shorters out there, or maybe for the recovery bounce. HSS Hire, which has got a good chance of going bust, 67% down for the year. It's got an update today, which is doing at a hosting event. It had put an RNS out this morning, but it's literally got hardly any information in it. But the three key points was they're still looking at making a £13 cost saving. They're still looking at rectifying the tool hire business and strengthening the commercial proposition. Personally, I think the cost of running this business with rent and rates, etc., when you can buy tools now, etc., I think the rental market is dribbling and 67% down, but that is going to come out. There'll be a reaction today. So that's either going to have a short-term bump up or it's a shortage to death. So that's about it, sir.
That sounds very healthy, Russell. Interested to know about your Bitcoin plans for the rest of the week. Lightening the low potentially. See what level you lighten the low at. Looks like
I still think there's potential that it could hit close to 18,000 by Friday, which is massive. I thought it would have hit 15 by 7 this morning, but it literally did slow up. But look at the speed of increase; it's just phenomenal. If there's any kind of further momentum, I don't think we've actually got to full mania yet either. I think when we get to full mania, well, God knows what's going to happen, but it could be. But it has been catalysed by obviously CBOE, CME, Nasdaq Futures, Jamie Dimon's company, JP Morgan, etc. But they even drag out. It looks like a spitting image character, but Greenspan was on yesterday, and he was making his normal kind of comments that people will bet on anything as long as they can make money. In effect, at the moment, I think you can still make money on it. I'm not sure what the impact will be on these exchanges on Saturday, Sunday, 5 p.m. But that's why I'll be diluting, watching, and then going back in. Yeah. So
Okay.
I still think.
Okay, Russell. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you, Russell. We'll see you at the same time tomorrow.
Okay.
Cheers. Over, I hope now to Mr. John Adamson from Share Talk, who normally has a small cap situation.
I do have
How are
a
you today,
small
John?
cap situation going on today.
Yes.
So I got to admit, I think the news is beginning to dry up now in true Christmas fashion. I've not really seen many RNSs this morning on AIM that particularly excite me. There is one company I do like, but the RNS for me isn't really one that I want to discuss. But the company, if you want to look at it, is Verditech PLC, VDTK, and they are essentially in the clean tech space. They've just announced this morning a letter of intent has been signed for one of their for the commercialization of their carbon dioxide absorber technology products. But other than the headline, it doesn't really give you a lot of detail, so I'm not really going to talk too much about that. The stock in focus today will be Macango. So we actually recovered Macango MKA 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago on Friday, maybe 2 weeks ago today even. We covered them. The prior close to that day was about 4 pence. They were about 8.25 when we were talking about them. They finished the day around 10.5 pence, having reached about 11.25. This is all on the back of their agreement with Talaxis, which is a subsidiary of the Noble Group, Singapore-based commodities trader. And really what I want to do today was actually focus on Noble Group, which is actually listed in Hong Kong. So Noble Group are in a significant disarray with their finances at the moment. And they're currently in talks to restructure their debts. So essentially the money that they've put aside via the Talaxis Limited subsidiary is it's peanuts compared to their debts, which are totaling around 3.5 billion US. So that the financial package they're doing Macango is about 12 million GBP. But what we're seeing increasingly at the moment via the likes of Bloomberg and Business Times and various other media is that they are looking to restructure all of their debts prior to Christmas. So the Macango share price has basically suffered in the interim while all this sort of media hype around Noble has been put out, and I think we're at a point where that kind of that debt looks to have been put into the Macango share price. So it seems to me now that the Macango share price is reliant on Noble, a turnaround in Noble's fortunes. So we're awaiting an approval on the first tranche of monies that Macango will receive, and I believe it should go back to testing above that 10p area once that approval is received. So it's just a case of the money has been set aside. We need the paperwork now to say that that's signed and it's definitely going to be paid within this sort of coming months. So I think never fear for those who've maybe bought in on the spike, because what looks to me is that this debt restructuring is getting sorted at Noble, albeit with a significant amount of asset stripping in the process. But I think if you look at the amounts of money we're talking with Macango compared to Noble's bigger problems, you know, this is obviously not, you know, Noble's #1 priority, but you know, the returns that they can make through Macango's mining projects in the rare earths sector would be, you know, a very attractive proposition for them to be recovering some of those losses. So it would make sense for them to be moving ahead quickly with this kind of project. So, and as we see from your chart there at the bottom, there's been a small recovery last few days. So I think I'm just expecting that to continue, basically. So.
Yeah, just like the shares are back to the bottom of that channel there that I've drawn, sort of 5.5p.
Yeah.
They bounced above the 50-day average, which is normally a good sign. That's 4.83, so they're too strong to need to test it. And obviously the dust has settled anyway on that spike. So if you like Macango, presumably this is rather more appealing than buying at 12p, where we are now. So that's quite healthy. But John Adamson, we're out of time on this particular little slot. Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll have your fare this time tomorrow.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, John. Now over to Mr. Ian Foster, I hope. How are you today, Ian? Enjoying the markets?
Oh, absolutely beautiful, Zach. Gorgeous, especially Bitcoin, but everything else probably is not so good.
Yes.
If I'm honest. But, and yourself, yes, good?
Yes, well, I'm enjoying all the movements here and there, but I suppose it is today non-farm payroll day, I believe. Well, we've had that, we've already gone through.
Friday, tomorrow?
That's right, yes, exactly, sorry. I'm sleepy today.
Oh, of course, yeah, well, I don't blame you. No, getting back.
No, I was just thinking because they had the Thanksgiving. Last week was Thanksgiving because it's always the first Friday in the month, but because of Thanksgiving, it's pushed on another week. So there we go.
Yes. Well, look, of course, you know yourself. I mean, any excuse or to not for your analysis not to for the market not to move based on your analysis is probably
that's the one. Yeah.
Yes. But anyway, as you can see here this morning, cable presently here in large green bars. This isn't a very short time frame chart, as you know. The guidance chart, 15-minute chart here, is certainly showing more weakness. But I think both in the euro dollar and on cable this morning, we have to look at the bigger picture. There's, as I said yesterday, maybe going again the grain a little bit, I still think that there will be an up move on cable. I know it's going to be maybe led through this news coming out of Europe, out of Brexit. Supposedly text messages, etc. that expected this morning, but whatever the case is, I'm only reading the bars, and if I read the charts, the market that I'm reading is the weekly. This is the daily cable market, which is pound dollar. We had a bearish bar yesterday, and we're expecting to take the low out, but on a weekly basis, Zach, it's still bullish with the high being 135.49 up here. So we're trading inside. It's an inside bar, and you know all about inside bars as far as technical analysis is concerned.
Yeah.
So that is giving me looking at the bigger picture, perhaps the cable, there's a long trade there. I believe the euro dollar is in a different position completely, and the reason I say that is because it broke last week's low of 118.08 on a weekly basis, and that was out of a bullish bar. So that will leave negativity. Yesterday it went to a low of 117.79, and I have been a couple of trades in euro dollar. The last trade, I believe, I locked in a few pips, and the previous trade I think I was a break-even trade. So I'm looking for a further move down. Believe it or not, it hasn't as yet happened. And again, you can see in the 4-hour chart here, we have the red bars with the lower vertical bar trading pattern high. And again, on the 60-minute chart, with probably the immediate level is 118.07. So I'd really, if it's going to show further weakness initially, it needs to stay below 118.07. Cable is coming out of the support level here, so I still think there's you can see in the 4-hour chart, we're really in a neutral, more in a neutral basis of having the weakness at the minute as far as cable is concerned in relation to the euro dollar. The indices, again, we can look into the Japanese yens, another market I'm looking at very intently. We have a high of yesterday at 150.136, presently trading at 150.59. Just presently breaking up through a previous low here, which is still okay. The bars are starting to go green, but probably later on I will be keeping a very close eye on pound yen for myself, perhaps looking for a short signal there. Getting into the indices quickly, we have got this is the DAX. Now, the European markets, both the FTSE and the DAX, are certainly a little bit different as per the close yesterday in comparison to the Dow. It was quite in recent times it's been the opposite way around. The Dow has been bullish and America has been bullish as a whole, and Europe's been a bit more bearish. And today it is the complete opposite, or as far as the analysis, end of day analysis goes yesterday. The reason I say this is we had a bullish bar, a bullish close on the DAX on a daily basis, and we have exactly the same on the FTSE. Now, the FTSE has come off so far today, but my objective today is long signals with an objective of taking out the 7369 to the upside. So again, I'll be keeping an eye on the intraday charts and seeing do they turn around and start giving me higher highs and higher lows with the objective of going higher. And the same for the DAX. And the DAX is starting to come off at this minute in time, and we have the blue bars, large bar here at this minute in time, but coming down to this previous support. So it's exactly the same, whereas in the US we have got a complete different scenario. Look, we've a bearish bar, and yesterday was a small range bar where it closed at 140, and there wasn't much trading yesterday. So it's slightly different comparing the European indices with the US as these speak. That can quickly turn around, you know. So that is my take for today. I would be looking possibly to go short the euro dollar and keeping an eye for possibly a long on cable, and then keeping an eye here on the indices. But they're not in sync at this minute in time. So either the Europeans going to get in sync with the US or vice versa.
Round up there from you, and we'll speak to you.
Hello.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ian.
Not at all, I can't hear you.
That's okay. Thank you very much. Right, just finishing off with the shares of the day London market. See up 3 points. You can see that top of the screen there. Volume movers, what you'd expect, I suppose. Pet stock up near 147 at the moment. Regal Petroleum, somebody highlighted that to me a couple of weeks back as with the volume going into that stock. So that's seems to be maintaining the momentum there. Hemogenics, another company I mentioned here a couple of times before, blood treatment company. I think there's an announcement today, but after the AGM, share a couple on that. So that's one of the rises, up 5%. Carillion, the troubled service group, a bit of a dead cat bounce situation there. And William breaking through the 3% to 300 pence area. A bit of a recovery, or continuing the recovery there. Down in the mouth, mining company falling further down to 57 pence at the moment, and I suppose those are the major so far. Debenhams, some retail woes coming through there for that. But let's see, around 73.50 today. That's where we leave today's show. Thank you to Ian and Russell and John, and we will have the same crack team tomorrow at 7:30.
And thank you, Zach. Thank you very much indeed. Have a great day.
Thank you, Simon.